If God created the universe with perfect, unchangeable laws, why did he completely suspend them for Jesus' birth? This isn't a theological debate. It's a direct challenge to our understanding of logic, science, and divine intent. Join us. This is Man versus Religion, as we dissect this foundational miracle, not to simply believe, but to truly comprehend the extraordinary reason behind God's ultimate rule break. For as long as human beings have looked at the sky and wondered where everything came from, one idea has remained constant: order. The universe is not chaos. It moves with precision. Stars follow paths. Seasons repeat. Cause follows effect. This consistency is not just scientific, it is philosophical. It is how the human mind distinguishes reality from imagination. And according to religion, this order is not accidental. It is intentional, designed, willed by God, which makes one moment in religious history uniquely disruptive. The birth of Jesus Christ, a child said to be born without a biological father, not as poetry, not as allegory, but as a literal suspension of the natural process by which all human life begins. And this is where the tension begins, not between belief and disbelief, but between logic and exception. If God created the laws of nature, and if those laws reflect divine wisdom, then they are not arbitrary. They are not temporary habits God sometimes follows and sometimes abandons. They are expressions of intention. So the question is unavoidable. Why would God suspend his own system at the very moment he seeks to guide humanity? Why break the rule instead of fulfilling it? Throughout history, God is described as consistent. The sun does not rise randomly. Water does not sometimes burn and sometimes freeze without cause. The Quran describes this consistency as Sanatul Adam, established way of God, a divine pattern that does not change without reason. Nothing he does is without wisdom. Nothing he creates is in vain. So when Christianity presents the virgin birth as necessary, logic presses harder. Necessary for what? For God to enter creation, for purity, for authority, for recognition. To understand why this question matters, we must first understand what a miracle actually represents. A miracle is not just something rare. It is not just something unexplained. A miracle, by definition, is a violation of the expected order of reality. It is a declaration that the rules no longer apply, and rules only matter if they are normally absolute. In Islam, a miracle, mujizat, is an extraordinary event or phenomenon that is beyond human capability, is attributed to Allah God, serves as a sign of prophethood or divine message, challenges human understanding or capabilities. Islam does not deny the miraculous nature of Jesus. In fact, it affirms it clearly. But it reframes the miracle in a way that preserves divine coherence rather than challenging it. The Quran presents Jesus as born miraculously, yes, but not as a rupture in God's order. Rather, as a reminder of it. Adam was created without a father or a mother. Eve was created from Adam without a mother. Jesus was created without a father. Different forms, same creator. The point is not exception, it is power. Not contradiction but demonstration. From an Islamic perspective, the mistake is not acknowledging the miracle. The mistake is what the miracle is made to mean. In Christianity, the virgin birth becomes proof of divinity. In Islam, it becomes proof of submission. Jesus does not transcend humanity because of how he was born. He exemplifies it because of how completely he surrendered to God's will. The miracle is not a badge of godhood. It is a sign pointing away from the self and toward the Creator. This distinction matters deeply. Because once a miracle is used to elevate a human into divinity, logic fractures. God becomes dependent on biological loopholes. Divine authority becomes tied to genetic uniqueness, and the consistency of God's law becomes conditional. Islam refuses this framework entirely. The Quran states that God does not need to enter his creation to guide it. He does not need to become human to understand human suffering. He does not need blood, sacrifice, or incarnation to forgive. These are human solutions projected onto a divine being. God's power is not enhanced by exception. It is revealed through control. This is why Islamic theology preserves a radical simplicity. God is one. He does not split. He does not incarnate. He does not contradict himself. His signs exist within creation, not as violations of it. And this brings us back to logic. Logic is not an enemy of God. It is a gift from him. The Quran repeatedly challenges humanity to think, to reason, to reflect. Will you not use your intellect? Is not a rhetorical question, it is a demand. Faith in Islam is not blind surrender. It is informed trust built on coherence. So when Islam acknowledges the miraculous birth of Jesus, it does so without collapsing reason. The miracle does not establish a new category of being. It does not rewrite the nature of God. It does not introduce theological paradoxes that must be accepted rather than understood. Instead, it reinforces a consistent principle: God creates however He wills. No suspension of law is required, because law itself is His creation, not His constraint. The problem arises when miracles are interpreted as exceptions that elevate creatures rather than signs that humble them. This is why Islam draws a clear line. Jesus is one of the greatest messengers of God. Born miraculously, empowered with signs, supported by the Spirit, but always human, always dependent, always worshipping the same God He called others to worship. This preserves something crucial: moral clarity. Because once divinity is assigned to a human being, accountability blurs. Who is praying to whom? Who is obeying whom? Who is suffering, and who is orchestrating the suffering? The narrative becomes tangled, paradoxes multiply, and believers are asked not to resolve them but to revere them. Islam offers a different resolution. It says the miracle was never about breaking logic. It was about confronting arrogance, about reminding humanity that creation does not require intermediaries, that lineage does not define worth, that God is not limited by process but also not inconsistent in purpose. And here is the most important point: the Quran never asks you to believe because something is illogical. It asks you to believe because it is meaningful, consistent, and morally transformative. Miracles are signs, not foundations. They point to truth. They are not substitutes for it. This is why Islamic theology does not rest salvation on accepting a biological anomaly. It rests it on recognizing divine unity, moral responsibility, and conscious submission. In this framework, Jesus does not lose significance. He gains clarity. He becomes a messenger who stood against corruption, who called people back to sincerity, who healed by God's permission, not his own power, who lived humbly, prayed devoutly, and warned against elevating him beyond his station. And this makes the message stronger, not weaker, because a God who remains transcendent does not need to bend reality to prove himself. A God who is one does not need to fragment into forms to be near. A God who is just does not require inherited guilt or divine sacrifice to forgive. He requires sincerity. So when we ask why the birth of Jesus was miraculous, Islam answers without contradiction. It was a sign, not an exception. A demonstration of divine power, not a suspension of divine order. A test of humility, not an invitation to deification. And perhaps this is the real divide between logic and miracle: not whether miracles happen, but how we interpret them. Do they point us toward God, or do they replace Him? Islam insists on the former, and in doing so, it offers something rare in religious thought: a theology where faith and reason do not wrestle for dominance, but walk side by side, where God remains God, where humans remain human, and where truth does not require contradiction to survive. That is not a retreat from mystery. It is respect for coherence. God is not bound by the physical laws of nature, but He is consistent with rational coherence. Otherwise, communication between God and humanity becomes impossible.